Hi. For assessment 3, you were asked to write a kind of reflection and evaluation of your own story. Some people sort of think, well, why am I being asked to do that? And the main reason is that it helps you to slow down and to really focus on what you've actually done. So there's what you intended to achieve, but when you stop and you look and you start thinking about the literary devices or the writing principles that you've actually used, and you kind of think, well, I meant to use this one, but I've ended up doing this, or not applying that principle. That kind of active reflection and sort of thinking about what was intended, what resulted, and all the rest of it is a really good way of sort of beginning to dig deeper into the principles of writing and how to use them and how to apply them to the stories that you want to tell. So please do part 2. Sometimes people will just send in the story without part 2, but we need both parts of the assessment to be able to give you a pass. So for no other reason except a practical reason, you need to do the reflection analysis part of the part of the assessment. May I say, enjoy it. It's a really good time to think about what you've been doing and what you've been trying to achieve, and to evaluate all those different steps, and to sort of, sometimes you'll look at something and evaluate it in this kind of cool, objective way, and you can think, well, I did a really good job. I really achieved what I intended to achieve, and that's a very satisfying feeling. And the other side of that is sometimes you look at it and you thought, whew, I really wanted to write a light, popular fiction romance that left the reader with a smile on the face, but actually I've ended up with something quite dark and thoughtful, and it's very different from what I expected. That might be surprising sometimes, but of itself it can still be a good feeling, because it means you can sort of think, this is what I can do, and maybe you've thought that you weren't capable of doing it. So it can be quite a sort of steep learning curve. I mean, the other side of that story is if you think, no, I really want to write light fiction, but here I am with this dark and, dreary sort of stump through the gritty streets of London or whatever, then if you really still want to write light fiction, then you're going to have to go back and review your voice and your style and your language use and your characters and the plot events that you've got, which took you away from that early intention. So it really doesn't matter what you discover as part of that evaluation process. It's the act of thinking and discovering that is really important. So please take time to think about what we're asking you to look at as detailed in the assessment instructions, and give yourself time to look at what you've written in an analytical way, and that's going to mean finishing the story, putting it aside for a few days, and then coming back to look at it with sort of relatively fresh eyes so you can be objective, and to pick your story apart in a constructively destructive way, if that makes sense. I'm a big fan, I had to say, of this kind of evaluation. It isn't easy when we write something, regardless of what kind of story it is. It is something that comes out from within us. It means something to us. And when we pour it out and we put it down in words and everything else, it just feels like our baby. It really does, that we're sending out into the world. So then, just as looking at a baby of our own, or a favourite thing, if we were to look at it with critical eyes, would seem a bit mean, it can feel the same about looking at something we've produced and being critical about it. But it's an important part of the process, and it's criticism in the most positive ways, in that it's not just sort of saying this is good, this needs strengthening, but it's a kind of criticism that moves you forward with your writing. It's not an opportunity to beat yourself up. I just want to establish that. There's plenty of critical people out there, and people who are going to review work who are going to come up with nasty things. I mean, just think of the guy Moon and his wife Natalie Kills. There's people like that in the world of writing as well, and that's going to happen. It happens to most published writers sooner or later. So don't put that on your own head. You've got a passion to write, and you've got something to say, and a story to tell, and a will to do it. I mean, you're halfway there. So, remember those good, positive things, but just look at your story and evaluate it for elements of craft. That's all we're talking about. So make sure you do that. Take advantage of the opportunity and think deeply about your story. Express your thoughts, state what your intentions were and how well you fulfilled those intentions. And if there's a gap between the two, say what that means to you and what you might do as a result. And doing so is the kind of thing that's going to help you grow as a writer.